Okay, we are starting out the remainder of Chapter 3 with the topic of hypnosis. Now, there's a widely held belief that hypnosis is some sort of sleep. In fact, the Greeks called their god of sleep Hypnos. Maybe that's where that idea comes from. But in fact, hypnosis is a very different form of consciousness than sleep, a very different state. The most widely accepted definition is the one you see on the screen here. Hypnosis is a social interaction in which one person, the hypnotist, suggests to another, the subject, that certain perceptions, feelings, thoughts, or behaviors will spontaneously occur. So, to take that apart a bit, you have an interaction between two people, the hypnotist and subject, and then this influences the experiences or behavior of the person. Now, the primary characteristics that are generally observed in hypnosis include, first of all, intense focus. Under hypnosis, people are able to focus their attention very intently. In fact, when the hypnotist induces hypnosis, they begin usually by asking the person to focus their attention. They may ask them to focus their attention on a spot on the ceiling, or maybe focus their attention on some particular object, or maybe they'll say, I want you to focus on the sound of my voice to the exclusion of all other things. So they get the person focusing. Secondly, relaxation is a commonly found phenomenon within hypnosis, and indeed we can get people to relax very well under hypnosis. And once again, getting the person to relax is also typically part of a hypnotic induction. So once the person is focusing their attention intently, then the hypnotist continues with instructions for relaxation. Things like, take a nice deep breath, now let it out, and as you do, feel all the tension draining from your body, and so forth. The third characteristic of hypnosis then is heightened suggestibility. The person is somewhat more likely to comply with suggestions than they ordinarily will be. Somewhat more cooperative, you might say, than they generally would be. And we'll see why in a while. Now, first of all, there's a lot of falsehoods and myths about hypnosis. Some people have the idea that hypnosis gives the hypnotist complete power over the subject. In fact, most of those who practice hypnosis agree that its power resides in the subject's openness to suggestions, not any magical formula that the hypnotist has used to gain control of the person. In fact, most will say all hypnosis is really self-hypnosis, with the hypnotist simply acting as a guide to help induce that state. Now, questions then that come up, that again often there are misconceptions. One would be, can everyone be hypnotized? Research indicates that 95% of the population can be hypnotized. 5 of this 95%, 5% of that group is highly hypnotizable. They're very good at experiencing hypnosis. So most people can experience hypnosis. Those who are highly hypnotizable might, for example, be asked to not feel pain, and potentially could even undergo major surgery without an anesthetic, using just hypnosis to relieve pain. Now, these individuals who are highly hypnotizable tend to be people who are able to intensely focus their attention, and also those who are highly imaginative as well, those that can vividly daydream and experience things that they imagine. That tends to be the characteristics of these kind of folks. Often the hypnotist then will engage in tests of suggestibility with an individual to gauge whether they are a good candidate for hypnosis, or how good a candidate they are. Another question that may come up is, can hypnosis enhance the recall of forgotten events? Well, one thing we can say about hypnosis and memory is people do remember more things under hypnosis typically. However, what they remember is not reliable. In fact, some things that the person recalls under hypnosis may be accurate, but they also may produce pseudo-memories, false memories, in order to comply with the suggestion to remember something, if indeed they don't actually remember. So we find that memories that are retrieved under hypnosis are not dependable. That's why our court system doesn't allow testimony that's gained under hypnosis. Now, even though there may be pseudo-memories, on occasion a person under hypnosis is able to remember information that otherwise they were not able to recall. For example, under hypnosis, on some occasions, people might be able to remember, say, the license plate of a number that was in a car crash that they couldn't remember. When that happens, generally we would suggest that the reason they're able to more readily remember that under hypnosis is they're probably considerably more relaxed, able to access that information more readily. That said, in many cases, a person has no memory of details such as that under hypnosis as well. So that's a mixed bag. Oh, by the way, I think our textbook uses the statement, that which is remembered under hypnosis is often a mixture of fact and fiction. Some of it may be accurate, some may be fictional, some may be inaccurate. Now, another question that comes up is, can hypnosis force people to act against their will? Can that hypnotist get you to do something that you would feel is wrong, immoral, and so forth? Now, the answer to this question is a little bit complex. It's sort of a yes and no thing. Act against their will? Generally not. If the hypnotist suggests something that the person truly does not want to do, generally the subject simply ignores that suggestion. Now, on the other hand, can the person under hypnosis be induced to do things that they would say is wrong, that is immoral or unethical? And the answer is yes. However, no more so than we can get the person to do without hypnosis. Now, for example, one experiment, what they did is they had a group of college students who volunteered, and they tested to make sure they were all psychologically normal. They then divided them at random into two groups. One group, they induced hypnosis and certified that they were under hypnosis. The other group was simply told to pretend that they were hypnotized. Now, each individual from each group then separately was asked to take a powder, which they were told was a powerful acid, and throw that in the research assistant's face. Obviously, a very dangerous, unethical, immoral thing to do. And what did they find? Were people willing to do this under hypnosis? Yes. As a matter of fact, about 2/3 of the hypnotized subjects actually did that. Now, at that point, you might say, oh, so, see, hypnosis can get people to do things that they would ordinarily believe to be wrong. Well, that's sort of true. They did this. However, here's the other side of the story. What percentage, what proportion of those who were simply asked to pretend that they were under hypnosis were willing to throw the acid in the research assistant's face? Turns out, roughly the same percentage. No significant difference in the action of either group. So it didn't require actual hypnosis to get people to do something they would say is wrong. Simply the suggestion being made by an authority figure, the researcher, under these special circumstances was sufficient, hypnosis or not. So, yeah, people can be induced to do things like that, but indeed we can do that without hypnosis quite readily as well. So, sort of a yes and no thing. Now, can hypnosis be used for therapeutic purposes? Yes. As a matter of fact, post-hypnotic suggestions given under hypnosis to be acted on after the person is no longer under hypnosis may have significant influence that can be beneficial. Now, what we've also learned is hypnosis really doesn't work all that well as a standalone treatment used just alone, but rather works best when added to an overall treatment program. When this is done, the effectiveness of that treatment program often increases significantly. Now, what sort of things can this be beneficial for? Smoking cessation, weight loss, relaxation, things of that nature, and again, particularly when added to a good treatment program. Can hypnosis be used to alleviate pain? Well, the answer is yes. However, the amount of pain relief that an individual feels varies greatly. For some people under hypnosis, the effect is very mild. For others, moderate. And for some people, as we mentioned earlier, the highly hypnotizable individual, the pain relief is pretty much almost complete, and such that the person might undergo surgery without anesthetic. Now, its use as a pain reliever is more common in Europe than here in the U.S. There it's being used quite frequently to relieve pain. And one of the ways that they do this, they may use it along with an anesthetic. The suggestion to feel less pain as well as relaxation that can come along with hypnosis then means the person doesn't feel pain as much, and a lesser dosage of that anesthetic is needed then. Now, explaining what is going on within hypnosis, you have two basic theories. The first theory, the social influence theory, says, well, this is not really even a different state. This is a situation where people are influenced by their interactions with others. So under hypnosis, the subject is playing the part of a good hypnotic subject. They're becoming an imaginative actor. Now, if you want to be a good hypnotic subject, well, what do? Well, of course, you do what the hypnotist suggests. That's what a good hypnotic subject would do. So they're playing the part, they're taking on the social role consistent with the situation. So this suggests it's nothing more than elaborate acting. Now, in fact, if any of you have maybe acted in a play or drama, sometimes people who do this tell us that, they got so caught up in playing the part that they became that character that they were playing for that short time. And that's sort of the thing we're talking about. Now, the second theory suggests that this is a different psychological state from normal waking consciousness, and the divided conscious theory says that what is going on is there is dissociation. There is a division of consciousness such that information and mental processes that normally would reach consciousness are split off from our conscious awareness. Now, studies by Hilgard, such as you see in the photo there, indicated that there is some validity to this theory. Hilgard put subjects under hypnosis and had them put their arm in a tub of ice water. Now, normally that becomes very painful within a minute and a half or so, to the point where very shortly thereafter people feel a need to remove their arm from that ice water. Now, under hypnosis, Hilgard suggested to his subjects that they would not feel pain, and when asked, were they feeling pain, the majority of the subjects said, no, I'm not feeling pain. Then Hilgard followed up with a second question. Is some part of you aware of pain? Here the subjects typically replied that yes, some part of them had an awareness of pain, but they were not experiencing that in a conscious way as they normally would. It was not reaching their awareness. So this suggested that information and mental processes were being split off from consciousness. Now, another way to illustrate the difference between these theories is in this example here. Under hypnosis, the person is told that this is an odorless liquid. In fact, it's actually ammonia, and put underneath below their nostrils. The person is asked to sniff it and tell what it smells like, and indeed the subject sniffs the ammonia and says, I don't smell anything. Now, the divided consciousness theory would say, well, hypnosis has caused a split in awareness. The person is actually taking in that information about that powerful ammonia odor, but it's not reaching their conscious awareness. The social influence theory would say, well, the reason that they say that they don't smell anything is because they're so caught up in the role of playing a good hypnotic subject that they're able to completely ignore that odor. So there you have it. Now, today, researchers are moving towards a unified theory of hypnosis, including both of these theories. And just with experience in hypnosis, one notes that in some cases one of these theories seems to be more operative, and in other cases the other. So both of these appear to be part of hypnosis in some cases. Now let's shift then to the topic of drugs and consciousness, and we'll focus on psychoactive drugs. These would include any chemical substance that alters our perception, our mood, our level of alertness, that alters any mental process, alters our psychological state. Psychoactive drugs, for the most part, work by mimicking the work of neurotransmitters or interfering with their action at the level of our neural synapses. One of the concerns that we have when considering psychoactive drugs is the potential of drug dependence. The person comes to the point where they need the drug within their system in order to function. And one of the indicators of this would be tolerance. The person with repeated exposure to the drug finds that the effect lessens. The drug no longer produces the desired effect in the former dosage. So the person then takes a larger dosage to get the same effect. This is due to neuroadaptation. Our nervous system adapts to the presence of that drug and no longer responds to smaller dosage. A second indicator of drug dependence would be withdrawal symptoms. So in absence of the drug, having not taken the drug, the person might experience physical pain, unpleasant physical symptoms of all different kinds, anywhere from runny nose to tremors, even seizures. This is an indicator of physical dependence on the drug. The person may also experience intense cravings, unpleasant emotional states when discontinuing that drug. These are indicators of psychological dependence. The psychological dependence on a drug is more difficult to overcome in the long run than the physical dependence component. In most cases, if the person discontinues using the drug within a few days or a couple weeks, the physical dependence is overcome. On the other hand, the person may continue to experience the cravings for the drug for very long periods of time, more difficult to overcome. You might know people that quit smoking years ago. They overcame a dependence on nicotine, but even years and years later occasionally have a craving for a cigarette or to have a smoke. Psychological dependence tends to be more difficult to overcome. Now, when we talk about drug addiction, this involves a dependence on the drug involving also cravings and continued use despite adverse consequences, whether these be physical or psychological. Some things, though, that might surprise some people regarding drug addiction. First of all, they find that not all users of a drug become immediately dependent. Some people don't immediately, particularly if the drug is used on an infrequent basis, if it's not used very frequently. That said, the more frequently the drug is used and for the longer period of time, the more likely the person is to become addicted to it. The second item, therapy for addiction is not always necessary for the person to overcome that drug problem, and it's often not effective. We may be led to think that anyone that is drug dependent must go to rehab or therapy, and in fact, many people overcome a drug dependence on their own, although often it's not really on their own, but is with support from friends, family, and others. Many people who are non-smokers today quit, you might say, on their own. There's an example, nicotine being, by the way, one of the most difficult drugs to overcome in terms of nicotine dependence. And also, often it is overestimated the effectiveness of therapy and rehab for addiction. In many cases, it fails. In fact, simple programs like Alcoholics Anonymous do just about as well as expensive rehab and therapy, but that's provided that the person continues to go to the meetings regularly. Now, the third item suggests that viewing addiction as a disease may be detrimental to the person who's drug dependent. We may be doing a disservice to them by suggesting that this is a disease. This may lead to the person feeling incapable of overcoming that dependence. They may assume that, well, if it's a disease, no matter what they do, they're going to remain drug dependent. or this may give them an excuse to continue. If the person is an alcoholic and they're told, well, yes, it's a disease, you're going to have this disease lifelong, they say, well, what's the use? I might as well just take another drink then. So, in fact, maybe even though, yes, addiction may have some similarities to disease, we probably do well to downplay that aspect of it and rather to emphasize the importance of conditioning as part of forming that behavior as well as overcoming it, rather than focusing on any disease-like similarities. Now, getting into specific psychoactive drugs, we can generally divide these into three groups: depressant drugs, stimulants, and hallucinogens. Starting with depressants, these are drugs that reduce the activity of the nervous system and slow down bodily functions such as heart rate and breathing. In this group, they will mention alcohol, barbiturate drugs, and opiates. Alcohol is probably the most familiar to most people, and it slows down mental processing. It disinhibits tendencies that we have, impairs motor skills and coordination, as well as judgment and memory, and reduces self-awareness. The person is less aware of themselves. Maybe that's why sometimes people, if they're going through painful events, will drink to become less aware of that. And it also interferes with impulse control, our ability to control our actions. Now, most of us, if not all of us, have heard of the dangers of drinking and driving. Without a doubt, that is very dangerous. What many people are not aware is that alcohol is also present when, quite frequently, when people have unwanted sexual experience, date rape, that sort of thing. Frequently, one or both of the individuals are under the influence of alcohol, and so one should be aware that that state when one is intoxicated can leave them vulnerable to those kinds of experiences, or on the other hand, can also disinhibit a person's judgment such that they might engage in that kind of experience, taking advantage of others. So that's something to be aware of. Now, we also know that heavy use of alcohol over a long period of time can also damage the brain. And here you see two brain scans, a woman without alcoholism and a woman who has been alcohol dependent for quite some time. You see the shrinkage of brain tissue here. Another type of depressant drug, barbiturates, that are typically used as sleep medications or tranquilizers. In their effects, in many ways similar to alcohol, and these also have the potential for dependence. So that means that if a person needs to be given one of these medications, that steps should be taken to prevent dependence, or if they do become dependent on it, to withdraw safely from it. Sometimes people also are not aware that when these drugs are taken along with alcohol, the effects of each of them is multiplied such that it can cause the person to stop breathing, heart to stop beating, and things of that kind. Overdoses, when combined with alcohol, may be lethal, of course by itself too, but more likely to occur with alcohol. We also have, we might mention opiate drugs in this category, also are depressant drugs, things that are derived from opium, poppy, morphine, heroin, codeine. These depress the activity of the nervous system. That said, they're some of the best pain relievers that we have, and also provide a sense of calmness, relieving anxiety as well. On the other hand, they are highly addictive. They produce a euphoric high feeling. The person develops a rapid tolerance to the opiate drug, and therefore a need to take more of it. And withdrawal, once one becomes dependent, can be brutal. So often the person would prefer to continue using the drug than to deal with overcoming the dependence. Their ability to reduce pain and relieve anxiety so effectively is derived from their ability to bind with our endorphin receptors. By the way, one of the things that you should know about these drugs like morphine is when prescribed medically and where the usage of these is then supervised properly, they find a very low risk of addiction long term. However, when a person takes these drugs without supervision and in order to experience the high rather than for pain relief, that's where the likelihood of addiction increases greatly. So if you get hurt and you have to be given morphine for a time, supervised properly by your doctor, you shouldn't become worried about becoming dependent on that long term. Now, stimulant drugs sort of do the opposite of those that we just mentioned. They excite the nervous system, speed up bodily functions, and we have a whole list here that we'll just briefly touch on. Amphetamines, methamphetamine, caffeine, nicotine, cocaine, ecstasy all fall into this category. Now, in general, the effects of stimulant drugs increase the heart rate, elevate blood pressure, suppress appetite, increase alertness, provide a sense of increased energy and confidence. That said, when they wear off, we may experience the very opposite effects: fatigue, headache, irritability, depression. So it's kind of a two-sided thing. Amphetamines may be used to treat ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. These increase the alertness of the individual, make concentrating more readily possible. So use medically things, amphetamines like Ritalin, Adderall, and so forth have a legitimate use. Now, that said, the abuse of prescription amphetamines has increased recently, particularly amongst college students. Some college students are using these in order to stay up, to complete projects and study for exams. So far, the research suggests that even though the person may be able to stay awake, the learning that takes place is not necessarily as significant as if one had done that studying without the use of the amphetamine. So it is a strategy that really may not succeed better than simply budgeting your time in order to study within normal hours. Methamphetamine is a powerful amphetamine, and this produces a massive release of dopamine, so the person feels a sense of energetic, euphoric mood, feeling of being high. Effects may last 8 to 10 hours. The downside is that this then may depress baseline dopamine levels. So when not taking the drug, the person does not get pleasurable effects from normal activity. The person may feel depressed and down when not taking the drug. Withdrawal from methamphetamine for those who are dependent on it also can be difficult, if not dangerous. Insomnia, seizures, aggressive behavior may occur as the person withdraws from the drug. the prevalence of this drug, at one time it was thought to be, something that was just limited to, bikers and kind of the maybe some people that were kind of down and out. Not that bikers are, by the way. There's nothing wrong with being a biker. But anyways, what's changed about that is people that you would never expect to be drug users, let alone methamphetamine today, may be using this drug. In fact, some very busy parents may be using methamphetamine to get everything done. What we kind of call the soccer mom, the mom that has their kids in all kinds of activities as well as maybe working, may be using methamphetamine just to keep going and running their kids back and forth to all kinds of activities. So that might be a surprise, finding out that person you never suspected is using methamphetamine. Now, next we come to caffeine and nicotine. So now we get to offend anybody who we haven't offended before. When we look at these, well, there's probably some reason why these are so popular. In fact, when taken, they do provide a sense of energy. That said, they have other stimulant effects as well, increasing heart rate and breathing, that sort of thing. When we look at caffeine, this is the most widely used psychoactive drug in the world. It's also found in many substances. Of course, you first think of things like coffee, tea, maybe energy drinks, but even over-the-counter headache medication often has some caffeine, because often it works better with a little caffeine. Now, a mild dose of this increases alertness, visual acuity, things of that nature for 3 or 4 hours or so. Even a mild dose for some people may cause insomnia hours later. And of course, a larger dose of caffeine, as some of you may have experienced, can make you feel on edge, jittery, jumpy, and so forth, irritable. So, even caffeine, too much can be a bad thing. Tolerance and withdrawal from caffeine, very common. And I'll have to tell you, when I get up in the morning, I like to have my cup of coffee, and if I start the day without that cup of coffee, I kind of just don't feel right. A lot of us have some level of dependency on it. Tolerance, you find the person that started out with just 1 cup of coffee, pretty soon they're taking another cup later and drinking larger and larger quantities of coffee or whatever they're getting their caffeine. And withdrawal, common too. Person that doesn't get their usual dosage of caffeine may feel sleepy, might feel irritable, grouchy, don't talk to me till I've had my caffeine, things like that. So pretty common. Now, that said, we don't get real concerned about people become dependent on caffeine, and maybe there's a few reasons for that. It's legal, whereas some of the other drugs we're talking about, the legal system says they are not. And it's reasonably affordable. You don't find too many people that are robbing houses in order to get money to get caffeine. Most people don't go out and spend their whole paycheck on caffeine. Well, I don't know. You could maybe do that at Starbucks. But anyways, typically people say, not so bad. And also research has showed generally doesn't have much in the way of negative effects on the person unless the use is very excessive. In fact, things like coffee and tea may actually have some substances that benefit. So maybe that's why there's not the concern about the use of caffeine. On the other hand, nicotine, we have learned, is the drug that causes the most death and disability worldwide. Maybe a surprise to you. You might think it was one of the others on our list, nicotine. One of our top world health threats The World Health Organization estimates that we could fill 25 jumbo jets per day full of people who have died of smoking-related illness. Lifelong smokers are much more likely to die from a number of ailments, heart disease, lung cancer, and so on, things that are often slow and painful death. Now, what the drug companies, the cigarette companies have found is that if they want to get people dependent on nicotine, they need to get to them in their teen years. If people aren't hooked by the time they leave their teen years, it's unlikely that they'll become dependent on nicotine. Nicotine is also highly addictive, difficult to quit once started. Now, you might say, well, why do people even begin smoking? It's not a real attractive thing at first, but in fact, often it is for acceptance, social motives, to be accepted by others, to be part of the group. As you see here, kids who were 11 to 17-year-old, if most of their friends smoked or all of them, there was a high likelihood they would too. If none of their friends smoked, well, almost no likelihood of it. So feeling a part of the group. Also, sometimes the social motives might be to appear more mature, to give a more, maybe for guys, a more macho appearance. And let's not forget that advertising, where it still exists, also promotes the use of that. And then when people smoke, well, there are some pleasant or maybe even some kind of useful effects. There is the release of epinephrine, norepinephrine, that dulls appetite, causes the person to be more alert, mentally sharp. I say, oh, seems to be actually advantageous in some situations. Also, there is a release of dopamine and endorphins, so there is a pleasurable effect, as well as that it reduces anxiety, calms, makes pain more tolerable, and so people will point to many of the positive effects when they get hooked on nicotine. That said, if we look at the long-term downsides, the illnesses and elevated likelihood of mortality, the long-term effects don't seem to justify any short-term benefits. Once a person does become dependent on nicotine, then they experience cravings when they don't take in their usual dosage, and those cravings, being unpleasant, can be ended by taking another smoke. So this is why people get hooked and stay hooked. And by the way, I should tell you that I used nicotine for many years. I used to dip snuff for at least 15 years, and I had to attempt getting to quit that. I probably tried 7-8 times before I was finally successful at giving it up once and for all. That's been 15 years ago now, so again, it is possible to overcome that. However, often it requires persistence and, again, support from others, family and friends, to help a person quit is beneficial as well. Cocaine is also a stimulant drug, powerful. This produces an immediate sense of euphoria, high, which then may be followed by a crash where the person feels fatigued. They might also then experience very powerful cravings to take the drug again. Addicted monkeys, in fact, pressed a lever 12,000 times for another fix of cocaine. This also may deplete supplies of dopamine, serotonin, and norepinephrine within the brain. So when the person doesn't take the drug, they don't feel very good mentally, and they want to repeat the use of the drug. This is one of the reasons that it also is very addictive. Now, they also found that in experiments, people under the influence of cocaine more readily administered powerful shocks to others than those who were not under the influence of this. It seems also to have the ability to increase aggressive behavior, pardon the person taking it. We also have on the list of stimulant drugs ecstasy, MDMA, and this has some stimulant effects. It also has some hallucinogenic effects as well. The sense of euphoria is part of that. People experience feelings of connectedness with others when taking this drug. In fact, at one point in time, some couples therapists thought that, oh, this might be a good drug for couples therapy, that it would help people feel more connected. But what was soon found is, in fact, it had some significant downsides. It can damage the serotonin-producing neurons such that the person has permanent mood problems, depression, anxiety problems, or memory deficits. And it also interferes with circadian rhythms so that the person can't get onto a normal, regular sleep schedule. So, turned out it was not that useful clinically. And of course, today is classified as not a legal drug. And that brings us to then the topic of hallucinogenic drugs, sometimes called psychedelic drugs. What these all have in common is they distort perception in some way. They change the way we perceive things or produce even hallucinations. LSD is one of the more famous hallucinogenic drugs, a relatively powerful one. And this works by blocking the action of serotonin. When the person takes LSD, often it's difficult for the person to distinguish the hallucinations that are produced from reality. When taking this drug, the person might first experience some geometric shapes. They might then, with more dosage, even experience hallucinations of various kinds of beings, anything from angels to monsters to you name it. Again, if they're having a bad trip, hallucinating very frightening creatures and things like that, the person might be harmed as they run from them, not being able to recognize that these are not real. This is another example of a drug that was once thought to be potentially a useful psychiatric drug. In early experiments with this drug, some people with psychiatric disorders were immediately cured with one dose of this. They found very quickly, though, that the results were extremely unpredictable. Whereas some people benefited greatly, some people got that much worse. And so, in fact, it was abandoned as a potential psychiatric drug, maybe along with some abuse by the researchers themselves. The effects of LSD in particular may resemble the experiences that sometimes are reported when people have a close brush with death, what we might call near-death experiences. Now, near-death experiences, maybe a person, their heart stopped and medical personnel were able to get their heart going again and revive them, things of that nature. Many people after that sort of thing report similar experiences, things like experiencing a tunnel with light at the end that seemingly is drawing them to the light, beings of various kinds. Often the beings are consistent with their religious beliefs. An out-of-body sensation. The person may feel as if they've left their body and they're observing that their body from above. They may report the actions of the medical personnel that they seemingly observed while they were felt they were out of their body. And a life review is often also a common experience. The person, the events of their life flash before them in rapid succession. Now, similar experiences reported by hallucinogen users, people that have temporal lobe seizures, or people who have experienced sensory deprivation, who have been isolated in a monotonous environment for a long period of time, have similar experiences. There's a considerable argument as to just what is the cause or significance of these near-death experiences, but they are frequently reported. Now, one of the effects that has been observed of near-death experiences is often the person after this experience does take on an increased concern for others. They often also feel a renewed sense of purpose in life, so this in fact may trigger a change in that person. Now, another hallucinogenic drug, going back to psychoactive drugs, marijuana, the primary ingredient THC and other ingredients produce a variety of effects: sensory intensification, various sensory experiences feel more intense, colors seem brighter, or foods seem tastier, and things like that. Also relaxation and euphoria, sense of high feeling, also a common experience with that, although not always the relaxation is reported. Disinhibition, so the person is more likely to act on urges that they would inhibit ordinarily. Slowed reaction time, in fact, well beyond the time that the person feels high, they record that their reactions are slower. Also, loss of coordination interferes with memory and logical thinking. Now, statistically, they found that frequent users were more likely to suffer from anxiety problems, depression, even schizophrenia. But the question is, these being correlational studies based on people's reports of their use of the drug or not, would be, is this association caused by the use of marijuana? And that's possible. Or it could be that, in fact, if the person has problems with anxiety or depression, they might be more prone to use marijuana in order to maybe self-medicate. Or there's even a third possibility that there are factors that promote both anxiety, depression, other mental disorders, and the use of marijuana as well, maybe poverty or hopelessness or something like that. So, when we try to evaluate that, that's difficult. And by the way, finding good research about the effects of marijuana is difficult as well, because of laws making it, federal laws making it illegal. It's difficult, if not impossible, for researchers to directly study its effects. We do know it does linger in the body, being present well beyond its usage. That said, today also is being promoted for various types of medical usage. One of them is to relieve glaucoma, too much pressure within the eyeball. It's being experimented on people with seizures and things like that. Once again, good research on this is difficult to come by. Some people sort of have come up with the idea that whatever your problem is, it'll do you some good. But we don't really have as much solid research to look at there, so that's really needed before we can make those conclusions in many cases. Now, notice that the likelihood of the use of psychoactive drugs is influenced by biological, psychological, as well as social cultural factors. There may be some genetic predispositions that a person is more vulnerable to use a particular drug repetitively, as well as variations in one's neurotransmitter systems. Maybe there is a deficit of a neurotransmitter that drug seems to correct, you might say, to some extent. And also, if the person has a thrill-seeking personality, to some extent that is biological, so we might put it under this, although we might also say that's a psychological influence in terms of their personality characteristics. Now, they've also found that those who lack a sense of purpose in life, that seem to be just drifting in life, are more likely to engage in the use of psychoactive drugs. Also, those who are under significant stress, and those who have psychological disorders such as depression. And social culturally, urban environment, that close interaction with others means one is exposed to more temptations to use the drug, and one's cultural attitude towards the use of that drug as well. If it is commonly used in that particular culture, well, that's person is more likely going to use it than if it's forbidden within that culture, although even then some people do, even if it is forbidden. And then the influences of peers, the people who are like us. We like to be accepted by others. This becomes a factor. Now, in terms of just a few things that psychologists identify as beneficial in preventing drug dependence, they would suggest that we educate the public about long-term risks of psychoactive drug use. We also can work to boost children's self-esteem so that they don't need to take the drug to feel better about themselves, help them to find a sense of purpose in life. They will often find that the drug use will not help them to achieve that purpose that they're striving for, and help kids to select beneficial friendships and teach them refusal skills, to say no. That by itself is not effective, but when combined with these other things is beneficial. And they have found increasing educational attainment also means that the person is less prone to abuse drugs. So continuing one's education has, it seems, a protective factor. So being in college, you're doing one of the things that is somewhat protective, believe it or not. So there you go. There is a list of things, whole bunch of stuff. Hope you found the video to be helpful, and that's all I got. So thanks. Bye-bye.